Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Crooked Illness. As you guys can see from the title of today's episode, we are going to be diving into a special technique that has helped my guest live life fulfilled as his authentic self. Joining me today is Eric Almeida, an emotional freedom technique practitioner who works with his clients to tackle their emotional pain to live their fullest lives. I am so excited to have Eric here to dive into the work he does, what it means, how it is beneficial, and how it has transformed his life. So without further ado, I want to welcome Eric to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Paris.
Yes,
I'm happy to be here.
yes, of course. I'm excited to have you on and to talk about this thing we're going to be getting into because it is very exciting and something that I actually did not know anything about before we met and had a conversation. But before we go ahead and get into that, I would love to hear your story. So let's start with that.
Absolutely. So, essentially, a couple of years ago, I was working in subsidized housing and very left brain oriented, very rigid, government paperwork, all that jazz. And I was very, very far from my path. And I was ignoring the emotional part of myself. I was ignoring all of that of me and was leaning so heavily onto one half of myself. And I knew that there were things I needed to deal with. My mind kept saying, hey, there's stuff here to talk that we need to work on. And I was just like, no, like I just got to keep, going through the day. And then one day my mind was like, nope, we've had enough. And I ended up having a really horrible panic attack at work. And for anyone who's never had a panic attack, they are truly terrible. I didn't know what it was at the time. I honestly thought I was having a heart attack, and I ended up calling my husband and leaving him a voicemail, basically saying goodbye, because I really thought that was the end. And so he really did not appreciate that when he heard that message. And luckily the paramedics showed up and they knew exactly what was going on right away, and they took care of me and they helped calm me down. And they said to me, like, this is a panic attack, you're freaking out, it's okay. And I was like, oh my god, and they got me to a point where I was a little bit more stable. And then my husband was able to pick me up and take me home. And after that happened, I tried to go to work the next day, and I'd either be driving there. I tried a couple of times in the next couple of days, and I'd either get there and then immediately start freaking out and have to leave, or there were times where I would be about like halfway down on the highway and be like, nope, and just have to turn around.
Wow. Yeah, I remember because I remember you telling me about that story of the first panic attack and especially having that at work and never having one before. So you don't even know what
Oh
really is
no.
happening. And especially, thinking it's a heart attack and thinking, okay, I'm gonna leave my husband this voicemail saying goodbye. And he hears that and is just like, what is happening? What's going on? Rushing to see what's happening with you. And just, I can't even imagine that just being in that situation in that moment and experiencing that. And then after the fact, getting told by paramedics, this is what it is. It's a panic attack. And of course, trying to go back the next day, go back to work and just, go about your day like usual, and having that really cause just a major interruption in your life. So yeah, that's scary for.
Absolutely. And what I didn't realize at that time was that I was really white knuckling it a lot of the times. I was white knuckling it through all the stress with work and everything like that. And after that panic attack, I couldn't do that anymore. Like, all of my confidence in my own mental strength was gone. And it got to, so I ended up taking a medical leave from work because I was like, I tried to go into work maybe 2 or 3 days in a row, and it was like, I just can't. And
Wow, yeah.
I ended up taking a medical leave from work, and it got really bad very quickly after that. I ended up becoming agoraphobic. I was scared to leave my house. I, as crazy as it sounds, I was scared to leave one room in my house. Like, I kind of confined myself to like the downstairs bedroom and just wouldn't want to leave. My husband would come in and check on me and be like, "Are you okay?" And I'd just be like in the fetal position, being like, "I'm hanging in there, I guess." And
Oh,
yeah, it was rough. It was very, very rough. And he was so freaked out. And he was like, "I don't know." He was like, "I don't know what to do."
yeah. How long
And
did that last for, the time you were in that stage of with agoraphobia? How long was that? How long did that last?
um, a good couple of weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. Yeah, like it was real. Like the first week or so, it was like I said, I didn't even want to leave that one room. Like I'd go into the kitchen, grab food, and then go right back in, like kind of like lock myself in there. And luckily, I connected with a therapist prior to all this happening who incorporates the EFT work into her practice. And so I immediately called her up a few days after all this happened and was like, "Sarah, I'm like, I need your help. I need your help now." And she made room in her schedule, thank God for her. And we were doing sessions over the phone because I was like, I don't feel comfortable to drive to you. And she was like, "No, that's fine. We can do this over the phone." And so I was having sessions in that guest bedroom with her in the beginning. And she was helping calm me down and just kind of process everything, and just kind of all of this emotional stuff that I had been pushing down so much basically just exploded out everywhere. And like I'm basically
Yeah.
like covered in my emotions, saying to Sarah like what the hell happened. Like I just like exploded in a weird
Wow.
way.
And I remember that you telling me a little bit about that experience with Sarah, who was the therapist, and she incorporated EFT into therapy sessions, and you were doing them over the phone. And then eventually you went in person. But what I thought was really cool is that during that time, you actually ended up opening a store, right? Actually, after.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I ended up, after maybe a couple of sessions with her over the phone, I got the courage to end up seeing her in person. And then after maybe about a month or two, I ended up formally leaving the job, ending the medical leave, and then just kind of just being like, I'm in rebuilding mode. And I was doing that with her. And then, so the panic attack happened in the early summer of 2 years ago. And then by about September, October, I got to the point where the agoraphobia completely was gone. And then I was actually playing with, I was trying to find what to do next. And I ended up settling on the idea of opening an antique store. And it was always kind of my when I retired job.
Yeah, that's
Because
so cool. I remember you telling me about just how amazing that is, from going from the place you were in, of having agoraphobia and being so scared to even leave one room and go into the kitchen, and then here you are after, your appointments with Sarah, these sessions, and then having the courage to actually go out and start and open up your own antique store, which is, quite seems like quite the contrast, right? Especially if for what you've got experienced.
no, 100%, 100%. And, you know, it was because of the EFT in particular. Like I had seen therapists throughout my life. Sarah is technically my fourth therapist. And the other therapists, they helped in their own ways. But with her, with the EFT work, it dives in so much deeper when it comes to your emotions. And for me, for being so long being disconnected from my emotions, it was a way for me to reconnect. Because this was very common for me for a very long time, where like an event would happen and I would feel it maybe like 3 days later. And I wouldn't
Wow.
know what was going on because
Yeah.
I was so disconnected from my emotions for a very, very long time. And
Wow. So
so,
I would love to hear about EFT. So your experience, I
mhm.
would love to hear, what was your experience like with EFT, and then what inspired you to get certified and start working with clients yourself?
For sure. So, for people who don't know, so EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. Essentially, you are tapping on acupressure points on the body, and it's based off of Chinese herbal medicine. So yeah, there's a tiny bit of woo-woo in touch with it when it comes
So
to
related
EFT.
to acupuncture
Yes, exactly.
relationship. Yeah. So
Yeah,
there's 10 points, right? 10 points.
With the technique that I was trained, there are 10 points that we do.
Oh,
There are
okay.
more than that, but the 10 points are the main ones that activate all of the meridians in the body. So
Oh,
there's
wow.
14 meridians, but 10 points activate all of them because some of the points cross. And so when you're in session doing the EFT work like I was with Sarah, and you're talking about whatever's going on, and then you're tapping on the points like I am now, so top of the head and eyebrow and side of the eye, and et cetera, et cetera. And as you're tapping on the points, the tapping on your body helps calm down the fight or flight response that you're experiencing from whatever you're talking about. So as helpful as the fight or flight response is, when you have an active danger in front of you, when it comes to a memory, especially a traumatic memory, that system is being activated again, even though you're not in danger. And so if you ever had an experience where you were like very embarrassed by something and you think about it now in the present, you can still you get a rapid heart rate, you can still get clammy palms, you can still, lose the blood from your face. And that is your fight or flight response kicking in again unnecessarily. And so when you're doing the tapping, it calms down the fight or flight response and allows you to really connect with those emotions again and process them and
Mhm.
let them go. Because essentially, in the moment, either you didn't let yourself feel the emotions or the emotions were so severe that your body is like, we can't handle all of this right now. So we're just going to shove this down.
Yeah.
And by
Is that
reconnecting,
kind of related to
yep,
like over too overwhelming at the time?
yes,
So that's what it is. So with the EFT, it helps to take away that fight or flight response that you have. Even though the event is over, you're still feeling those feelings as if you were still there. So doing that helps kind of pull you out of that place so you can actually process it and dive deeper into that to overcome that.
100%, exactly. And so initially, when you're tapping on something, when you're tapping on a memory, you process the strongest emotions first, and then those start to dwindle. And what commonly happens is that as those stronger emotions start to dwindle, other details start to surface from the memory that you might not remember because maybe it's just the fear that is so strong, and then you're realizing, oh my god, I didn't realize that, like, I was kind of ashamed by that, or I was really angry at this person for what happened, and then you end up processing those emotions as well. And the goal of EFT is to get the emotional charge of the memory down to nothing, so that the
Mm,
memory turns into just a series of facts. It becomes kind
okay.
of
Yeah.
takes all the color out of it, takes all the emotion out of it, it becomes just dry information. It's like, I was born in this state, I went to school at this state, I graduated at this state. It becomes very factual. And it gets
Wow.
to the point where you actually can have a hard time remembering the memory again because your brain's kind of like, oh, this isn't important to us anymore. We can let this go.
I love that. Was there a moment when you were doing the sessions with Sarah that was there a moment that you experienced that was indicating to you that I want to do this. I want to work with people practicing EFT, or how did you get interested in practicing it?
So when it the idea of becoming a mental health worker was actually the first career goal I wanted to do.
Oh,
So
wow.
when I graduated from college, I went to UMass Amherst, and I graduated with a psychology degree with the intention of becoming a clinician. And right after college, I worked at a residential program for children who are having emotional problems. And I did that work for about a year, and it was really tough work. You're working with kids, and their stories are just so heartbreaking, and so many of them were from the foster care system, and it was so rough. And I left that job being like, as much as I want to help people, I'm not strong enough to take on that kind of pain.
Yeah, I remember you actually telling me a little bit about that because we were talking and you were saying that was initially what you wanted to do was to go to get you got your degree in psychology and go in and become a clinician, and then after having that experience, for a year working with children and who are having different emotional challenges and really seeing that and being there and saying, "Wow, this is, no, it's not what you thought it was. It's not what you thought it was going to be like."
For sure, for sure. And for anyone who's a social worker or works in that world, burnout is so common because it's just, there's a lot of pain in the world. And, you know, social workers and therapists and everything under the sun, that when it comes to mental health, that's a lot to take on.
And that can be a whole new episode, that topic.
Oh yeah.
Right there.
And for sure. And so essentially, when I was doing the work with Sarah, and she was even telling me part of her own story of how she used to be a super anxious person, and then she did all this EFT work herself. And she was the calmest, most serene person I had ever met, and it was real.
Yeah, because didn't you meet her? She was speaking. She came and spoke to a group that you were in, and you thought after that, you were like, there was no way that this person, could have anxiety at the level she's talking about, because she just seems so just not even phased by doing that at all.
Yes. Yeah. I was introduced to her in the business group that I was part of when I was working in hospitality. She was representing her therapy business. And her feature presentation that she gave was talking about that. And I was like, and she was saying, like, I used to be super anxious and have a hard time. And I was like, there's no way. Like, there's so much calm from coming off of her that it drew me in. I'm like, I've never met a person this just level.
Wow.
And so
just seems so comfortable getting up there and having like the confidence, because especially, with speaking in front of people, it's a lot of people don't like that and hate public speaking. So to see somebody do that and come in and, talk about the therapy practice, the EFT, and you're just sitting there looking at her, listening and saying, wow, you struggled really badly with anxiety and all these things, and just being completely shocked by that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like, I'll be perfectly honest. There was a time where I hated public speaking. There was a time where doing something like this, like talking to you on a podcast, would petrify me beyond belief. And so like, I saw from her stories, I saw where she came from and where she was today. And since I was doing all that work on myself because of the panic attack, I was like, I want to get to that point where I can like give that gift to other people. Because the person that I am today, so I had this panic attack, it'll be 2 years this summer coming up.
Wow.
And the person I was when that panic attack happened compared to a year ago, vastly different. And then another year again to today, unrecognizable.
Wow.
Unrecognizable.
That's amazing.
Yeah, like I'm immensely more confident. I'm immensely more outgoing. I'm a lot more emotional in a positive way, like feeling my emotions as I should feel them live instead of them being delayed by some weird amount of time.
Yeah.
And just being really able to just be more confident and serene with life, and then just having drive.
Yeah, because I remember before, when we started out our first conversation, you were sharing with me about the job you had, and this was the job. Where was the one where you had the panic attack? That was in housing,
subsidized housing.
Subsidized housing. Yeah, and talking to me about that and how, you weren't happy. You weren't really, you didn't feel like you were being yourself, and you just felt like you were kind of going about your days and just kind of stuck in this routine that was really sucking almost the life out of you and taking so much from you. And just, and that's kind of, you share with me why you think the panic attack happened is because of, you were just, you weren't dealing with it. You were just trying to continue, keep going, moving forward. And then all of a sudden, just like, boom, it just happened. And then that really forced you, right? It forced you to realize, this is the situation, this is how my life is. I don't like it. I'm not enjoying this. And how do I fix this and get out of this place? So just really having that like moment with that panic attack.
Absolutely. Like it's funny in hindsight, I like to describe it as like, I had warning signs for a long time before that, and I knew I was having them and I was ignoring them. And now it's almost like my psyche tried to be nice, and it's like, well, you're not going to listen. So it basically came up with a bat and just knocked me out and dragged me back to where I needed to go. And as crazy as this sounds, I'm immensely grateful for it. Yeah, because it forced me to realign my life back to the path I'm supposed to be on.
Wow.
And
that's amazing.
Yeah. And like, trust me, for anyone who's had a panic attack, for someone to say they're grateful for it, they're probably thinking I'm nuts.
Yes.
Because it is a horrible horrible experience.
So
And trust me,
true.
I never want to have one again.
No.
But no, it was the course correction I needed because I knew I wasn't going to do it unless I had no choice. And I
Hmm.
even had those thoughts of like, I can handle this. I can just keep pushing past this. It's not a big deal. These issues I'm ignoring, I can keep ignoring them. And my
Yeah.
psyche's like,
Almost
we're
like if
running
it
out.
didn't happen, you still might be in the same place, continuing to try to push through and just, like you said, feeling like you have no choice but to face this and deal with it. And that was what that panic attack was for you, and not saying like, oh, I'd love to have another one again because of that, but just realizing and seeing and appreciating, even though it was terrible and horrifying. And because I had one, so I had one before, so I can say, a little bit about what I experienced. It's not good, it's not fun, but being able to look at that experience and say, wow, like if with what this did for me and making me see, all the options you had for yourself, how to pull yourself out of that job that you didn't like and go out and try different things, start your antique shop, do that. And then through these EFT sessions, really realizing how much it has done for you and really taking you from being agoraphobic, horrified, scared of leaving your house and a room in your house to being able to go out and start a store is crazy, because you would never think that someone who has such a fear on that level could do that. But you going through that and doing that, and then really being able to credit that to the sessions that you've had with Sarah through EFT, I think that's amazing. So I would love if you could walk me through what a session of EFT looks like and what you can expect after completing your first session.
For sure, for sure. So essentially, if a person's ready to do EFT work, as the practitioner, I would ask them, well, what is your goal with this kind of work? Is there some contemporary issue that you want to work on? Are you looking to just make a change in your life? What is the plan? Because I see myself as the practitioner, I see myself more as the guide, and the client takes me where they want to go. So, for example, using a very simple scenario, if someone's afraid of flying and they could walk in and say, I'm really scared of flying. I don't want to be scared of flying anymore. And so I'd be like, all right, so let's work on that. So we would start typically, I would teach them the basics of EFT with the 10 points throughout on the body, which they would do themselves, which can be done remote or in person. Obviously with COVID, everything's remote right
Yeah,
now.
and that's tapping, right, on the 10
Tapping,
points. So you
tapping on the
have
10 points.
head, top of the head, and
Yep. So
above the eyebrow. So there's, yeah, different areas. And then they would do that while you kind of allow them to guide you through what they want to work on, right? So like with that flying example, being afraid of flying, that's a good one. So
Yes. Yeah, so I would have them talk about what's going on with the flying as they're tapping, just so that they can let their emotions be processed as they're talking about it. And typically, what would happen is after a couple of rounds of tapping as they're talking, and for your viewers, they can see me doing the tapping and I hear it a little bit. What tends to happen is that typically some kind of memory will surface eventually. And it could take a couple of rounds before that happens, but usually a memory will surface. And using the simple example of a fear of flying, let's say the memory comes up of, when they were a little kid, they saw a really scary movie that involved a plane crash. And so we would be like, okay, so how strong is that memory? We would assess the memory on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being there's no emotional charge, 10 being it is petrifying beyond belief, and it's purely subjective to the person. They would guess how they feel about it or base it on their assessment there. And then we would tap down that memory and the details that come up from that memory until the memory is completely gone, brings them all the way down to 0. And in a very simple scenario, if it's only this one memory that's a source of this contemporary issue, once that memory is cleared, the contemporary issue should vanish. And that is a very, very simple scenario. With most situations, typically it takes about 3 to 5 memories to be processed for something to be cleared and for the contemporary issue to start to go away or to be gone altogether.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's so interesting, and especially how you use that example, because I love examples, like being able to like understand something through something you're comparing it to, such as, a person who's really afraid of flying and maybe won't get on a plane and feel like they can't for whatever reason. And you talk about these memories that are tied to that experience, and like you said, maybe there's more than one, or more than one thing connected to causing that fear. And we all have different things, right? Each person has their own situation or thing that they want to work on or that they're struggling with. But I think it makes it really easy to understand, especially with being able to lay out how that person can really, feel more comfortable about having that conversation with you and getting to the root of what's causing it. Because sometimes we don't know what it is. We know what's going on. We know there's something happening, but we don't always know what led up to this, what's causing this, what's, making it worse. We just know that something isn't right or isn't feeling right.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it is pretty rare and pretty uncommon for someone to walk into, an EFT session and be like, it's this memory is causing this problem. That would
Yeah.
require an immense amount of insight, which, hey, it makes everything much easier when someone walks in like that, but that's usually not how it goes. And a lot of times, even if someone walks in being like, I think this memory is tied to public speaking or fear of flying or whatever it is, that usually isn't the only one. It's usually there's usually more than one memory that tends to be tied to things. Like I said, it's for most people, like I said, it tends to be 3 to 5 memories you need to process. And then for severe repetitive issues or severe repetitive traumas, you could get closer to 10,
Mm,
but those are in extreme cases. And one of the really nice things about the EFT work, so like someone might be saying, let's use a rougher example. Let's say someone lives in a household with trauma. Maybe they're being abused by a relative or a guardian or something like that. And that was something that was happening to them repeatedly over a span of years. There could be thousands of memories. And they might be thinking, I can't do that many memories. That's going to take forever to get through it all. When you're doing the EFT work, you're focused on the strongest memories that bring up if it's something recurring like this. And as you're tapping down those stronger memories, you're also letting go of the weaker memories that are tethered to it. So if you imagine it like almost like little sand piles of trauma emotions.
yeah.
And
Oh.
if you remove the sand of one really tall pile all the way down to the bedrock, the sand of the other pile starts to come in and take its place a little bit.
Mm.
But then they all shrink. So you go after the big pillars and those go down, and then all the smaller ones start to dwindle and you take those up with them.
I love that example. I think that's so beautifully put, the way you describe that with the sand analogy of, having this experience and all these memories that go along with it, but you're trying to tackle, the tallest one to make that one go down, and then the other ones take that place, and then working on that, and how it's really a process, right? And we're,
Mm-hmm.
taking the steps to get through that process and really overcome whatever the thing is that is, hard or difficult, or, making you feel, a certain way, and trying to come through that and tackle that. And I think that's an awesome way to put that, because I think that's a really good example.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the really nice thing with EFT is that this is you're working with your own body system. Your mind or your psyche is not going to give you more than you can handle.
Mm,
And so as you're doing the tapping, it's only going to let you feel as much as you can handle. And your body is like purposely doesn't want to overload you, which is why it's repressed a lot of these emotions. And so as you're tapping on it and as you're bringing things down, your mind tends to be like, oh, that's gone. It's like, oh, well, how about this? Here's this other thing we've been holding back. And then
yes.
this other thing comes up and then you tap that down. And then your mind's like, oh, this is great. Like
Wow.
we're getting our resources back. How about this one? And then you tap that one down. And then eventually it's kind of like we've got this really gnarly one over here. And it's like, you know what? You did those really rough ones. I think you can handle this really gnarly one. And then
Mm-hmm.
that can happen too in session where like all of a sudden this really like hardcore memory comes up that the person may not have ever wanted to talk about, but then it surfaced because their mind is like, you can handle this, and we
Mm-hmm.
know that you've gotten through other ones that weren't as bad.
Yeah.
And so
Wow.
it's very, very gentle. It's me as the practitioner, I'm not pulling anything out of the client. I'm simply allowing whatever is ready to come up, and I
Mm-hmm.
help them let it go.
Oh, I love that. That is so awesome. That's incredible. Well, Eric, this has been so fun. I loved chatting with
Ditto.
you and just hearing your experience, your own personal experience before EFT and then during the process and how it's been so helpful to you in overcoming so many different things, especially, anxiety, agoraphobia, having that really crippling fear of leaving your home and kind of getting out of that situation and starting the antique shop and all just your whole story in general and kind of being able to see how helpful this has been to you and to so many areas of your life and how, you've gained so much from this. So you decided to practice this and help other people through things that you've gone through. And I think that's amazing. And I always love to, feature these kind of conversations and have people, share their stories with me and, different struggles or experiences they've had and things that they've faced and how did you overcome that? What helped you come out of that? What did you learn from that? And I think that you did such a great job of kind of getting into that and explaining that for me. So I just wanted to say thank you for coming on Crooked Illness and having this talk with me today. It's been awesome.
Thank you so much for having me on. I greatly appreciate it.
Yes, and we also have a gift that I'm excited about. We have a coupon code for you guys. It is Crooked Illness. You will get $30 off your first EFT session with Eric when using that code, guys. So I hope that everyone listening has enjoyed this episode as much as I've enjoyed creating it for you guys. And I hope that you all have a great rest of your day or nighttime, depending on when you're listening to this. And yeah, all right, guys. Bye, guys. And bye, Eric.
Bye, Paris. Thanks so much.